pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everybody to the September 2nd Fisherstown Council meeting. Okay, very good. As you may be aware, we did have one councilor that resigned. Renee Cox resigned a few weeks ago. And last week, the Republican Party had a caucus and caucused in Eric Moeller unanimously. At this point in time, we'll allow privilege to have Judge Hinkey with us here today to do the swearing in for Eric. Eric, if you step up with, you're very welcome. Good to see you. Congratulations. Do we have another presentation to hear before we do announcements?
I'll let him get back to work first. For the record, Scott Fadness, town manager, and it's quite an honor for me tonight to talk about someone who hates to be talked about, but he deserves a recognition. Eric Pethler, Public Works Director, who I consider a good friend and one of the hardest, most loyal working employees here at the town of Fishers, was recently at an international American Public Works Association event in Toronto, where he was bestowed quite an honor from that particular organization. It is the Donald C. Stone Donald C. Stone Award for Leadership and Excellence in Public Works. He is the only one to have ever received this in the state of Indiana. He is the only one to have ever received it without a engineering degree. And I can tell you on a day in and day out, what makes this organization, what makes this community run is Eric's work ethic that he's bestowed to his organization. Just to give you kind of a brief overview of what Eric's accomplished in the short time as Public Works Director, we took over all of the school snow plowing. He handled that as well as improved the level of service for snow plowing within the town of Fishers. We've taken over grounds maintenance for the schools, which we've improved a lot of the ball fields under Eric's supervision. We took over township cemetery maintenance. We took over the library maintenance. We've taken over snow removal at the township for a period of time. All of this Eric's done without one bit of drama. He just puts his head down and he gets it done. And his entire organization, as a compliment to his leadership, has reflected the very same thing. So truly an impressive individual, a friend of myself and a friend of many within the team here at our organization. And I couldn't be more proud to recognize the work that he's done and recognize the fact that he's clearly a leader among his peers. So with that, I hope everyone could give him a round of applause for his work. Eric?
No speech, Eric? Congratulations for a job well done. We do have some announcements this evening. Pete, do you have an announcement for us?
I do, John. 106th Street and Geist Road closure. The intersection of 106th Street and Geist Road will be closing beginning on or after September 8th for the construction of a very needed roundabout intersection to replace a two-way stop controlled intersection. An official detour route will be posted, and information about the detour is available on the Fishers website at fishers.in.us/drive-fishers. It is anticipated the intersection will be closed for 45 calendar days. More timely information about this and other projects can be received by signing up for updates on Twitter using @DriveFishers handle.
Thank you, Pete. Mike, do you have an announcement?
No.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I do. The Hamilton County Highway Department is having a public meeting. The Hamilton County Highway Department is hosting public information meeting for a bridge in the Fishers area. The meeting will be held in the Fishers Town Hall at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night, Wednesday, September 3rd. The bridge project is located on Eller Road, just north of 106th Street. For more information about the project in this meeting, go to the county's website at www.hamiltoncounty.an.gov.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
David, do you have an announcement?
Yes, John, I do. The Depot Nickel Plate has reached another milestone and will celebrate the opening of the on-site leasing office tomorrow. People interested in learning more about the luxury apartments coming to the Nickel Plate district are encouraged to stop by and get more information. The leasing office is open Monday through Saturday, from 9 to 6, and the website is thedepot@nickelplate.com.
Thank you very much, David. Do a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, and I'd like to pull 5C.
Okay. Motion by David, second by Pete. All's in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, in time. Thank you very much.
Well, we reviewed them.
Moving on to item
We're
6.
reviewing them these days, not approving.
Request to approve an amendment to the Saxony PUD and commitments concerning use and development of real estate. Second and third reading.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Stotts. I'm a planner 2 in the Department of Community Development. Tonight I'm here to present the Saxony Planned Unit Development Text Amendment. Saxony, as most of you are familiar with, is located on the northeast portion of Fishers off of exit 210, as shown here on the red dot. Saxony is approximately a 450 acre planned unit development in the town of Fishers. Within the Saxony PUD, there are several zoning districts available. To the north in purple, you'll see the medical district where we currently have IU Health Hospital. To the south, we have in yellow single-family residence, which is for the most part built out at this time. To the west, we have multifamily apartments. East is office and retail use. And then in the red in the center is truly the mixed-use portion allowed for the PUD. Tonight I'd want to focus a little bit on this subject parcel right here in red, the square lot of land. The text amendment tonight before you is kind of a two-part text amendment request, if you will. The first part deals with the commitments concerning the use and development of the real estate. When Saxony PUD was approved in roughly 2004-2005, there was also a set of 4 to 5 page commitments which were made to that subject parcel I highlighted a minute ago, again, right here in this area. Within that document, we'd like to focus on the request tonight, which would be to change the overall building height restriction of 35 feet and no more than 2-story buildings on that subject parcel. Republic Development has slated a project for David Weekly Townhomes to go on that site. In order for that project to move forward, they felt that this commitment would need to be modified slightly. The proposed commitments for this are the following 4 bullet points there. Partially, the reason 4 being replaced by 1 is to provide more clarification, which was asked during the Plan Commission process. So the first one would be to that commercial and apartment buildings shall not exceed 35 feet in height as measured by the town of Fishers and shall consist of no more than 2 stories. So that would stay the same for commercial and apartment buildings. However, townhomes and single-family homes immediately fronting Pennington Road, which is to the west, shall not exceed 2 stories. 2-story townhomes may include a finished living space in the roof area or attic, but shall not exceed 35 feet in height when measured from the finished floor elevation to the roof peak. And then third one, townhomes and single-family homes which are not fronting Pennington Road shall not exceed 42 feet in height when measured from the finished floor elevation to the roof peak. Again, those were worked through the Plan Commission process last week. And then the fourth one I'll touch on again later in my presentation, but later on in the Saxony PUD ordinance, it states that if you would like to use 0 front yard building setback, then you can do that if you were to raise the foundation of townhomes 3 to 4 feet in height. And what they have proposed here and committed to is that should the project consist of townhomes as it's slated for, which utilize a front yard setback of 0 feet collectively, the developer shall design a consistent floor finish elevation when compared to the adjacent perimeter street curb, that the majority of the adjacent units will set approximately 2 feet or more above the perimeter street curb. And this shall not require them to bring in any filled dirt in order to make this happen. So again, that's a little lengthy. We're trying to work with the dirt that's available on site, but still to accommodate staff's recommendation that these townhomes be raised approximately 2 feet so they're not on the same grade as the adjacent street. Again, here's the site with the additional commitments made. Here we have Pennington Road to the west, and we have some 3 single-family homes which are not a part of the Saxony PUD. You would believe that the commitments were made specifically for them. Here is the proposed David Weekley Townhomes concept plan. Here you see approximately 75 units on 5 acres. The red is representing the current building setback, which I'll touch base about here in just a minute, to the north, south, and east. Again, the commitment has been made that these units right here will not be more than 2 stories or 35 feet. They will utilize some attic space. All of the other units will not exceed 42 feet in overall height as measured from the peak. Here's kind of a concept plan for what David Weekley plans on building. This would be a mix of 2 and 3 stories. Here representing a 2-story with some attic space used, 3 stories on either side. Another example, what we should expect for that specific site. The second part of the request is really Republic Development wants to take this opportunity to change the front yard building setbacks throughout the entire Saxony PUD, as well as the parking. So currently, or the request tonight would be to reduce the front yard building setback from 15 feet currently to 0 feet. This would be along 134th Street, 131st, Minden Drive, and Dorster Drive. Also to reduce the parking setback from 15 feet to 5 feet along the same street frontages. As I had mentioned, they're going to remove the 3 to 4 foot raised foundation requirement in order to take advantage of the 0 lot building line. They have committed to approximately 2 feet. And then to encourage angled parking, they've stated that angled parking shall be required if buildings have 0 front setback on those streets. Here I wanted to provide a map of the streets which will be affected by the second portion of the request, if you will. 131st Street being the main drive. We have the Bond Building, which most people are familiar with, the Saxony Beach area in this location. This would be 134th, Minden Drive, and Dorster. The site we were looking at would be right there. With that, the petitioners, as you mentioned, asked for a combined second and third reading due to the positive recommendation given by Plan Commission and no public speaking at the public hearing. I have Ed Freeman with David Weekley Homes who would like to give a brief presentation now.
Good evening, members of the Fisherstown Council, and thank you for your time and consideration of the Saxony text amendment described by Kevin Stotts. I'm Ed Freeman, the land acquisition manager of David Weekley Homes, the petitioner, along with Republic Development for this text amendment. For your information, our company is also currently a home builder in the town of Fishers within Saxony. Briefly on our company, David Weekley Homes, which was founded in 1976 in Houston, Texas, has grown to become the largest privately held home builder in America. David Weekley Homes was recently named 2013 Builder of the Year by Professional Builders Magazine. We currently have operations in 18 markets around the country. Our primary business is the design, construction, marketing, and sales of new single-family homes. Our product lines vary to meet the needs of a market with homes designed for a variety of home buyers, as we have found in Fishers, Indiana. As noted previously, we are currently a builder within the Saxony development of Fishers, and although we have been building homes there for barely 18 months, we have sold over 30 homes in this time period and only have 3 lots left to construct homes on. We have greatly enjoyed building homes within the Saxony development of the town of Fishers and look forward to continuing building homes with our new home designs proposed for the Saxony property that is the subject of this text amendment. When we look for outstanding communities to invest and build our homes in, we look for great municipalities like Fishers, Indiana. Thank you for allowing me and David Weekley Homes to be before you this evening to request your consideration of this development text amendment, and thank you in advance for your approval of it. If you have any questions for me or my colleagues, Michael Lukey, David Weekley Homes Indiana Division President, or Sean McGinnis of Republic Development, on the text amendment or anything else related to this petition or David Weekley Homes, we will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Kevin or the petitioner?
Yeah, just a couple questions. Were there any issues with, I guess, Kevin, did anybody come to the Plan Commission, any of the neighbors? I'm just asking just because I know to the south and some of the others, maybe you, of course, maybe having residential versus potentially commercial now, if this change happens, maybe they like that. I just wondered if anybody came.
We did not have anyone show up to the meeting and speak on behalf of this project. We did have the one letter which was included in your staff report
Okay.
at the
Okay.
end. We've since, Sean McInnes with Republic Development have touched base with him regarding the use of the attic space.
Okay.
And he was comfortable with that. He liked the 35 feet being added back in, so we did that for him.
Okay. And then there are a couple different townhomes in the area, I think just to the northwest, and then a little bit further to the east on the same side of the road. Are those roughly the same? Actually, let me back up. My question is more around the density within this parcel, and you're going from one type of use to a different type of use. And it's kind of hard with this big PUD to say, well, it's one thing and it's going to go to another. So I kind of think about it as what is the feel of those different parcels? So is the density that they're requesting somewhat similar to those?
I do
make
not
sense?
believe so. If you look at specifically, you mentioned the northeast to the northeast of here. This is in the same area as referred to as C2. So we have the same guidelines. It actually goes off of unit count instead of density. So Sean, Mr. McInnes with Republic Development looked at that again, provided some documentation for myself and staff, and we did review that. They actually fully planned out in the particular area we're looking at. They still estimate that they would have over 400 lots or homes available to build after build out in this area.
Okay. And all of these, are they two-car garages?
Yes, which load from the rear.
Okay. Because sometimes on townhomes, the way our code is, we don't really have, I think at the end build out, many times on townhomes, you don't have enough guest spaces. And when you really see that as a problem is when you have some one-car garages, because you're always typically going to have 2 cars.
Yeah, I'll just add to that a little bit. There's also some limited but additional parking within the site itself, and then with the angled parking along 131st Minden Drive in Dorster, there are some additional parking spaces kind of targeted in this area.
Okay. And then the last question was more for Republic, and I'm not saying that there's a different reason, but when you do a whole change sometimes, I'm just trying to think through, are there ramifications that we might not know about by making that change now, the different setbacks. It might make sense, it'll make things cleaner. I know in the future when you guys want to develop, but sometimes it's easier to leave it, and then you come and make that request. So I'm just trying to think through, are there other things that maybe we missed that, just adding it into this one, does that hurt us in the future?
Sure, and give you, Sean, unless you want to attempt that.
Yeah, the streets that we're asking to change to zero, for the record, Sean McKinnon for Public Development, already have a zero setback for commercial. The issue that we have is we have a 15-foot setback if they become townhomes. If they're apartments or commercial, it's zero. So we're trying to just create a consistent street frontage.
Okay.
We're just modifying the townhomes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
The only thing I would add, oh, were you done, David?
Yes, thank you.
The only thing I would add is I have sat through first reading on this, and I've been to the Plan Commission. Petitioner has been very responsive to some of the issues that were raised in first reading, and there was quite a dialogue and discussion, some of the same issues that you talked about, David, during the Plan Commission, and the petitioner has gone back and addressed that with staff. So I'm very comfortable with this, and with that, I would recommend suspending the rules and approving on second reading.
Motion by Mike, second by Pete. All's in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Now, that's to suspend the rules.
Then we have a motion to actually pass.
I would move to approve the petitioner's request.
Motion by Mike, second by Pete. All's in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Kevin, thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen. Next item on the agenda is ordinance 072114, request to approve an ordinance amending the Allisonville Place PUD. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Adam Zaklikowski, at Planner 2, the Community Development Department. This particular item excuse me, is for a text amendment to the Allisonville Place PUD. This is for second and third reading. This particular PUD is located at the southwest corner of Allisonville Road and Easy Street, so it's out in the southwest corner of Fishers. Just to refresh your memory on some of the surrounding uses, this area, of course, being in the southwest portion of town, is quite built out. To the west is the Gatewood subdivision. Up to the northwest is the Waterford Gardens subdivision. There's also some retail and office uses in the surrounding area. More specifically, the property that we're looking at is a portion of Parcel D. So this is at the southwest corner of the overall project site. Parcel D actually extends all the way north of that blue line up to Easy Street, so it does include the area near the pond and two outlots to the north. But for this particular proposal, it just affects that real estate that's shown in blue. So the reason for this particular amendment is to allow a self-storage facility on this piece. Again, the acreage overall is 4.42 acres. Self-storage was not mentioned as an allowable use in the existing PUD, and the original intent was to have office development on this piece. The council conducted the first reading back on July 21st. The item did go to the Plan Commission on August 12th, in which there was a unanimous vote for a positive recommendation to council. As part of this amendment, there would be an updated concept plan, which you see here. This basically shows the layout of the self-storage facility. As you can see, the areas in brown represent buildings. So most notably, a building would wrap around the west side of the site and the south side. Just to go over some of the specifics in terms of the amendment itself, just to refresh your memory, a 50-foot building setback along the west and the south property line exists right now in the PUD. So as part of this amendment, the petitioner is looking to reduce that to 30 feet along the west and the south property line. though for purposes of planning, it would remain the same because the 30 feet was supposed to be used for landscaping in both scenarios. The current PUD allows for a 35-foot maximum per the Unified Development Ordinance. This particular project, it would be a majority of one-story units. The area near a corner of the property would be 2 stories, potentially, for climate-controlled self-storage. As I pointed out earlier, one of the buildings lines up along the entire west portion of the property. So as a result, the petitioner would not be providing a fence along that west or the south property line. But it's important to keep in mind that there would not be any parking, there wouldn't be any lighting, and no doors on that west or south side of the building. So a fence really would not really be necessary. They intend to preserve the existing tree line and to augment some of the trees that are out there today, rather than installing a berm with landscaping, because there's a potential that in putting in that berm, they may need to remove some trees, which would be counterproductive. But we do want to ensure that at build-out, whether they use some of the existing trees and augment it, that they need to have a minimum of 8 trees per 100 lineal feet. In terms of the architecture, the perimeter of the building needs to contain multiple textures. The elements would include items such as stucco and brick. There would be a 3-foot wainscot with brick columns around the building. This would be similar to the Brooks School self-storage in terms of architecture and general layout. I'll show you some pictures here just to refresh your memory. This is again on Brooks School just north of 116th, very similar. The only difference here is that this courtyard area wouldn't be quite as wide at the entrance on the east side of the property. But in terms of the brick architecture, the stucco look very similar. Staff believes that this is a suitable location for self-storage. It doesn't front Allisonville Road or Easy Street directly. We do believe that it's a low-impact use, and that coupled with the decorative facade treatments and the landscape buffering should make for a suitable project. The Plan Commission gave a positive recommendation with a couple of stipulations. First, they said that parking shall not be allowed in any of the buffering areas. That was just a point that we wanted to clarify. Also, in response to some concerns from neighbors that lived in Waterford Gardens, they wanted to ensure that there wasn't any signage along Easy Street. So although that was approved as part of the original PUD, this amendment would actually remove that sign along Easy Street. So the residents appear to be pleased with that. So with that, if you have any questions or comments, I'd be more than happy to address those. The applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Patricia, would you like to come up and have your comments?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. For the record, my name is Steve Harden. I'm a partner in the law firm of Fakery Baker Daniels. I'm pleased to be representing Shamrock Builders here this evening. With me from Shamrock is Mr. Greg O'Haron and Mr. George Geiger. The only thing I would add, and we appreciate Adam and the staff's work on this, his report was fine. I would just add that George and Greg and I met with the neighbors before we ever filed this project. You might remember when we came for first reading, we talked about the meeting we had with the homeowners. Particularly the folks that attended were along the western property line from Gatewood. We also then met with the Homeowners Association, the board, that evening as well. And Shamrock was very well received by them. They thought this was I think the quote at the Plan Commission was the best case scenario. They were most concerned with height, lights, and activity level of what could happen with how it's currently zoned today. And they were quite pleased, and we were happy that the board president came and spoke in favor at the Plan Commission. And then the neighbors that we learned right before the Plan Commission that lived in the other neighborhood who'd asked about the sign, Greg and George quickly agreed as well as to relocate that. So we were happy to be able to address any of the questions or comments the neighbors had. Other than that, we respectfully request your approval this evening on a combined second and third reading. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Adam or the petitioner?
I had heard from Waterford Gardens and Gabe Wood, and they'd asked the same thing. Did we hear from anybody else? Because I think those were the HOA people. I didn't know if anybody else had come. I didn't think anybody had. And then the only other thing is there's a 30-foot setback, and you're going to have a wall, which I understand that's probably a good visual to have 30 feet as opposed to 50 and then not have a wall. But, and I don't know how the drainage is, but just make sure when the drainage comes in right now, it all flows probably from the Gatewood homes to the east, and it probably filters through that open ground to a certain extent and maybe one or two spots. Just make sure in that 30 feet that we look through that and then we pick it up just so it doesn't pond, because sometimes you have that, you build a wall, but that's a clear stoppage for drainage and maybe it's not shown. But you can just look at it on the grading plan. But the only thing I'd say is, and you probably are anyway, just put little yard drains, pick it up and bring it onto the site.
Thank you.
One thing I would add, again, I've sat through first reading on this, and I've been to the Plan Commission. There was quite a bit of participation by some of the citizens in the Gatewood community, as well as Waterford Gardens. And I think I just want to comment that Waterford Gardens is significantly away from the actual development itself. It's actually on the north side of Easy Street. And the petitioner has been very responsive to the point of moving the ground sign, which is currently permitted. So they've been very responsive to the people in the community. And as Mr. Harden indicated, there could be a Kmart out there or a Walmart, and this is something that I think the neighbors will be happy with and they can live with. So with that, I would recommend suspension of the rules and approval on second reading.
Motion by Mike, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Do a motion to approve the ordinance?
So moved.
Motion by Mike, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Move on to our next item on our agenda, item 8, ordinance 072114A. Request to approve amendments regarding the steeplechase PUD.
Again, for the record, Adam Zach Wachowski with the Planning Department. Before you is for second reading for a text amendment to the Steeplechase PUD. Steeplechase is located out in the southeast corner of Fishers. It's in a fairly rapidly growing area of the town. Steeplechase itself is kind of a U-shaped development. The piece that we're focusing in on for the text amendment purposes is right at the northwest corner of Florida and 104th Street, so it's the area bounded in blue. This particular property is currently undeveloped. There is some farmland on the property. There's also some undeveloped forests on the northeast side. Most notably, there's also a power line easement that goes north-south quite substantially near the eastern side of the property. So again, this text amendment only deals with District 1. It's a 30-acre piece. And they're needing to amend it in order to accommodate an empty nester product. This project would amend the lot widths, the setbacks, and the architectural and landscaping requirements in order to accommodate that empty nester product. Council conducted the first reading back on July 21st. Plan Commission voted 7-1 for a positive recommendation to Council back on August 12th. Here is a comparison of the current concept plan in the PUD, which basically, if you were to develop the property according to the existing standards, the item on the left is what it would look like, although no plan graphically is shown that way. But as part of this amendment, there would be a concept plan as shown on the right, and you can see how the pattern is different. Lots are a little bit narrower. It's a lot more compact in order to accommodate that empty nester product. Specifically, the maximum number of single-family homes would increase in this piece from 33 to 40. A number of the setbacks change. For example, most notably, the minimum lot width would be reduced from 100 feet to 65 feet wide. and the side and the rear setbacks are reduced accordingly in order to accommodate this product. In terms of landscaping and buffering, along 104th Street, the petitioner is proposing to do the same type of buffering that is looking to be done in the Oakhurst subdivision along 101st. So if you recall with that one, there was some additional percentages of trees that needed to be evergreen, and some upgraded articulation in the rear parts of the homes in order to try to add some aesthetics along the arterial. There'll also be a 6-foot fence with masonry columns every 50 feet, and there'd be 2 rows of evergreen trees along a portion of the north property. This, of course, would be the piece that is the farmland piece right now. There would also be 1 row of evergreen trees and no fence along the west property line. In terms of the architecture, some notable items is that the current PUD requires that all of the homes have a 3-car garage. Again, since they're smaller products on a smaller lot, the amendment only requires 50%. This amendment would also require 36 inches of masonry wainscot around the base of each side of the home. The architectural design point system is carried forward from the existing zoning commitments. In terms of staff comments, we are unopposed to the increase in density. We do believe it remains consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. It is compatible with adjacent land uses. Overall architectural standards and landscape buffering regulations will help to ensure that a quality development is constructed. The Plan Commission gave a positive recommendation. They did, based on staff's input, have a condition that would increase the number of points from the architectural features list. The original number of points was 4, and it went up to 6 as part of this condition, and the applicant has incorporated that into the document. So with that, if you have any questions or comments, I'd be more than happy to address those, and the petitioner is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Second. Everything the same, Mr. Hardin?
Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. For the record, my name is Steve Hardin. I'm pleased to be representing the petitioners on this proposal. As we mentioned at first reading, just as a reminder, about a year ago, we were here in front of the council seeking to propose an amendment to the Steeplechase PUD that included both District 1, 2, and 3. This is District 1. At that time, we did not have a builder or builders lined up to make commitments for architecture and design. Council at that point encouraged us to withdraw the request to amend the PUD amendment with respect to District 1 until and unless we knew who the actual builder was going to be. So the property owner, MI Homes, spent that next period of time also speaking with the Builders Association of Greater Indianapolis, looking for different builders to see who might want to do it, and then eventually selected the builders that you see in your packet today, and those builders, we have their elevations have been committed to. We then met with the homeowners from the Valleys at Geist. Particularly, we sent out the invitation for to all the neighbors, but they were the ones mainly that came. They live right there to the north of the property, and they were very much in support of the proposal. We asked them what they would prefer to see in the back, whether it was fence, mound, trees, what kind of a combination they'd like. And so what you see in the packet is what we asked of them and what they said that they would like to see. They also were much appreciative of the revised site layout and the height of the homes and how it would impact them. And I do think that there was one comment from the only person at the Plan Commission that had a comment lived in the neighborhood to the west of Florida Road, the Prescott neighborhood. And those homes are marketed from 290 to 310. And that's even, she was concerned about what the price point might be here. And we shared with her that we can't legislate price points, but that the anticipated price ranges were going to be from the mid-300s to over $500,000 based upon the architectural requirements and the type of homes that are planned. So just want to give you that update. With that, we'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have for us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. So we do have a motion on the floor. Any questions for first Mr. Hardin or Adam? The motion to have second reading, and Scott made that motion. Have a second. Yes, Mike second. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9, ordinance 090214, request to annex 8 acres located at 13283 Cynthia Ann Road.
Good evening. For the record again, my name is Kevin Stotts, a planner in the Community Development Department. Tonight, we'd ask that we hold first reading for a voluntary annexation known as the Heritage Park annexation. The location of this proposed subdivision will be again in the northeast portion of Fishers to the west of Cynthian Road and to the south of 136th Street. Heritage Park is really comprised of 371 lots on approximately 230 acres. However, 8 acres of this land owned by Pulte has not been annexed into the town of Fishers to this point, which is why we're here tonight. Currently, the site is empty and is, as mentioned, approximately 8 acres. The 8 acres that was shown there is anticipated to have 5 whole lots on it, 8 partial, and then largely common area. Here's kind of how this piece of the puzzle fits into the overall proposed subdivision known as Heritage Park today, but that likely will be changing as we already have a Heritage Park. Again, tonight, this would be first reading. Staff would ask that you hold first reading for this, and we have anticipated second reading on September 15th with the public hearing at that date. Thank you.
First reading. Thank you very much. Next item is ordinance 090214A, request to adopt an ordinance authorizing fire and emergency services to provide a community paramedic program.
Steve Russo, Fire Chief. Tonight we'd like to present to you first reading on an ordinance authorizing the Department of Fire and Emergency Services to establish a community paramedic program. I'd like to have this first reading to just get the process rolling, and we'd be happy to answer any of your questions offline.
That first reading. Thank you. Moving on to item 11, ordinance 090214B, request to approve an amendment to the political sign standard in the Unified Development Ordinance. We're having first reading on that as well.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Rick Brandow, Assistant Director, Department of Community Development and Zoning Administrator. Before you this evening is a request to amend the current temporary sign ordinance dealing with political signs. Back in the primary election time, many of you may be aware that we had a number of issues arise about the permitting process for signs that are greater than 8 square feet. We polled the other surrounding communities, found that none of the other communities within the county require a permit for those signs. We saw a little benefit of maintaining a permitting process for those signs, and therefore recommending that we eliminate that requirement. We are requesting first reading this evening, planning to go to public hearing before the Plan Commission on the 9th next week, coming back to the Town Council for second reading, hopefully third reading and adoption on the 15th.
I think an important point of clarification here, although the permit would not be required, none of the regulations regarding these signs would change. So if our people are out patrolling and they identify a sign that is violating any type of zoning ordinance or right-of-way restrictions, they would still get pulled. It's just a matter of having them come in and fill out a permit.
Move that first reading.
And the other thing, too, is any political sign has a certain time limit, so depending on the size, this passes, it's still under that time constraint.
No, we eliminated the time frame
There's no time
requirement
limit.
several years ago. Legal counsel eliminated that. A couple of the other jurisdictions within the area were coming under fire for having a time limit for signage that is essentially freedom of speech.
Okay. We've had first reading. Thank you, Rick. Moving on to item 12, ordinance 090214C, request to approve an ordinance rescinding the town's fixed assets code section 35.25 and 35.26. Good
Good evening, Council. I'm Nathan George, Deputy Town Manager. Before you is a proposal to simply remove an outdated portion of our code regarding fixed asset. Currently, since 2007, we have a surplus property policy in place that coincides or actually works with all the state statutes regarding surplus property. The fixed asset from 1999, when it was approved, simply states some very basic procedures, which is the property value is greater than $500, the department shall complete a capital asset form. Currently, our practice is $5,000. That's what the clerk treasurer's office requires, and that's what the State Board of Accounts requires. So we actually do a $5,000 when we do a capital asset form. The policy, the surplus policy, is an administrative policy administered by the town manager's office. It's a much more detailed policy, and I'm just requesting that the council remove this from our books so that we can continue with the surplus property policy that's been in place in 2007. Any questions?
Second. Motion by Pete, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion to pass. Second. Motion by Pete, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Next item is item 13.
I just want to say, that's the kind of attention to detail that we get from out of your office, and that's very, very good. You're very, very good about looking for those kind of things, making things work smoother. We appreciate your efforts.
For the record, Scott Fadness, Town Manager. About probably 2 or 3 months ago, myself and Councilmember Easley were contacted by a group of residents from Britton Falls, the Del Webb community in the far eastern part of our community. It is an age-restricted community, 55 and older, about whether or not golf carts would be allowed within their subdivision on public streets. Some of you may be aware or may not be aware that the state of Indiana bans the use of golf carts on all streets unless a municipality enacts an ordinance to enable residents to operate on those streets. Councilmember Easley and I spoke about this and started working on a draft ordinance to allow for golf carts on public streets under certain circumstances. And what this ordinance before you tonight for your consideration really is an enablement under certain criteria for residents to be able to bring golf carts into their community. The primary threshold would be a survey done by the residents that 75% of the residents express a desire, 75% of the homeowners express a desire to allow golf carts in their community. Tonight I would ask that we just have first reading on this and not suspend the rules. Certainly want to make sure that this gets properly vetted and that we have plenty of communication. I will tell you that when we talk about this, our vision of this would be that the golf carts would only be used within the interior streets of the community. Golf carts are still not allowed on the paths and pedestrian crosswalks that we see today. So this would just be for the interior streets of those subdivisions that meet the criteria. Questions on the ordinance?
Only comment I have on that is this could be considered a go sign for other communities. I have seen golf carts in other areas of the town that we're obviously not permitting at all. And if we allow this, we want to make sure. I'd like to see what plan you have in place to publicly, to give the public notice of the new ordinance and its implications and its application and where it can be done, and an option for those other communities that may desire to have golf carts, make sure they come in. And I'd ask the police department to participate in that as well for any kind of a plan that you might have should there be a plethora of golf carts in the community.
Sorry, Pete, are you done? I'm sorry, thanks, thank you. Stuart Easley definitely has been a proponent of this. He wants to make sure it's done right as well. And so, unfortunately, he's not here this evening. He's out on business, but he would be here this evening actually introducing it if he were here. The, from a legal perspective, I just want to make sure that all the state laws applying to motor vehicles apply in terms of use of the vehicles. They have to comply with all the traffic ordinances, traffic laws of the town and the state, impairment laws in terms of operating a vehicle while impaired. And we want to make sure it's clear that just because you're driving a golf cart doesn't mean that none of the laws apply.
That's correct. The way this is written, with this ordinance, we are not allowed to circumvent state law, so all of the state laws are still applicable.
Okay. And are there any insurance requirements? Because again, anytime someone takes a...
Yeah,
There are, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Other questions? Like I said, tonight we would just ask for first reading, and then we will bring this back.
Every reading. Thank you very much, Scott. We've had first reading. Item 14, R090214A, request to adopt a resolution to approve a second amendment to the project agreement for the Jaeger KFC project.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm Tom Dickey. I'm the director of the Community Development Department. I'm back before you with a similar request that I was here the meeting before last to extend the project agreement with the Jaeger project. And let me give you a quick update on that. The project is ready to close with respect to one issue, or except with respect to one issue, and that relates to a consent needed from Target. And I can't recall if I went into this in any detail last time, but since we were back asking for another extension, I wanted to make sure you were clear on what the issue was. When Target was developed, it included land that is now where the yellow Jaeger building sits. It did not include the piece of property that we own, so the property that we bought from KFC was not subject to this restriction, but there's a restriction on properties around Target that they cannot be taller than a certain height limit. And the garage and the building proposed on the site is required to be is taller than that. Target is completely on board with the nickel plate redevelopment. Even before we talked to them, they had been keeping up to speed with it, are very supportive of it and excited about it, and excited about the Jaeger project. We're just waiting now on the Target's legal counsel to get the right document to counsel for the Jaeger team and get that approved. And so that did not happen, has not happened as of this afternoon. And the last extension we did of the project agreement is through tomorrow, so we didn't want to risk having the project agreement expire and dealing with the ramifications of that. So we're back before you tonight, just simply extending it essentially for another 30 days to October 1st to make sure if Target is slower than we'd all like, that we don't come back and have to request another extension at the next meeting. So that's the reason for the extension. There's no reason for alarm on anyone's part because Target, again, is completely on board, just a matter of getting it through the legal department. So with that, we'd ask approval of this resolution authorizing the extension of that project agreement through October 1st.
Questions for Tom?
So you will be getting a variance then for that particular provision of that?
No, it's a private land restriction. It's not a zoning restriction. So in the declaration, when the developer, before selling the parcel to Target, owned a lot of other land around Target and put a private deed restriction on there at Target's request, essentially, that said buildings can't be higher than a certain height, and that was to protect Target's sort of sight line to be able to see the building. It is very common for Targets and those other big boxes to do that. So it's a private land use restriction, so there will not need for a variance.
Okay, thank you.
Motion by Pete. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by David. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 15, request to approve resolution to deappropriate town general funds and cumulative capital development funds. Welcome back, Nathan.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Nathan George, Deputy Town Manager. This is a simple request. To explain what an appropriation is simply for the public is when the money is appropriated, it means it's approved by council, it can be spent within the proper guidelines. Above $50,000, council approval. Below $50,000, town manager approval. In this situation, we have two areas. We have $12 million in the general budget, which has been appropriated, but will not actually be spent. So this is simply just a request to deappropriate, meaning that it cannot be spent unless it's reappropriated or refunded. This money will be back into the 2015 budget. The other portion is the CCD, which is the cumulative capital development money. Essentially, by State Board of Accounts laws, we have to, in order to roll money over, we have to have it encumbered, which means you have to have a vendor and have it set specifically for a project. So in other words, we don't have we're not able to do that this time, so what we want to do is de-appropriate this money, put it back in the cash balance. It'll be reappropriated with the budgeted items that Scott's budgeting through the balance, or through the budget for next year anyway, so. It's just simply more of a cleanup, really.
Sure.
I move to approve resolution.
Motion by Mike, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So regular items, request to approve a professional service agreement for the design of the Allisonville Road lift station parallel force main.
Good evening. For the record, Rick Farnham, Assistant Director of Public Works. Before you for your consideration is a professional services agreement for design services for a new force main that would run from the existing Allisonville Road lift station, which is at the corner of Allisonville Road and 106th Street, all the way to the Cheney Creek wastewater treatment plant. It's about 7,000 feet of force main would be put in, be roughly between 18 and 24 inches in diameter. That dimension is not set yet in stone because the design work hasn't taken place. This force main would be parallel to the existing 18-inch force main that currently exists in that location. So it most likely will run right along the south side of 106th Street and then the east side of Eller Road into the Public Works Complex to the Cheney Creek plant. Staff solicited a proposal from Commonwealth Engineers to do this work. We did that because Commonwealth was involved in the building improvements that are just completed this past year, and that's one of the termination points for this force main. They also were involved with the upgrades to the pumping systems, electrical instrumentation at the Allisonville lift station. Excuse me. About 3 years ago, they did that work. So really, they've done the work at both locations where this force main is going to start and where it's really going to end. They also were the contractor that put in the original force main. So based on their project performance at the plant and at this lift station and their expertise in this particular area, we thought it was best to look to them for a professional services agreement to do this work. So we're asking tonight for approval for this professional services agreement and to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement. Be more than happy to answer any questions or take comments.
Any questions for Rich?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick.
Hey, Rick, I'd like to see you after the meeting, but unless you have to go somewhere, I think we're going to get through this, but I need to talk with you if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Moving on to item 17, request to approve any apartment transportation contract for road rehabilitation on 113th Street from Oleo to Florida Road.
Good evening, Jeff Hill with the Engineering Department. Before you requesting consideration of the agreement, President Weingart mentioned, I'd actually like to request we consider items 17, 18, and 19 all with one approval if the town council so desires. What we've got are three agreements between Fishers and INDOT. Essentially, these are boilerplate standard type agreements, and they're similar to ones we brought you in recent months on other federal aid projects. But specifically, these three agreements spell out Fishers' involvement on three federal aid projects. One at 113th Street, it's a road rehabilitation project between Oleo Road and Florida Road. One at 131st Street and Cumberland Road, an intersection improvement there, and an intersection improvement at 113th Street and Florida Road. The first two, the one on 113th between Oleo and Florida, as well as 131st and Cumberland, would be funded at an 80-20 split. And what that is 80% federal funds and 20% local funds for the construction and the construction inspection for those projects. And 113th in Florida would be funded at 90% federal and 10% local dollars for the construction and the construction inspection. The engineering, the right-of-way costs, utility costs, those would be funded 100% by Fishers for all three projects. And these projects will allow us to move forward, although they're not real time sensitive at this point. It's one piece of documentation we'll need to get in place as the projects start to move forward. Respectfully request your consideration and approval to authorize these agreements and execute them with INDOT and allow the town manager to execute them on your behalf. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
I just have a question on the road improvement on Florida, from Oleo to Florida. is trail work involved in that? Are we adding a trail on one side or the other?
Yes, the general scope of work is to rehabilitate the pavement, provide for two at least 11-foot wide travel lanes, as well as a path on one side of the road, which that side would be determined as we get into the design development phase. There is some existing trail that's out there along 113th Street,
Right.
and we'd like to tap into as much of that as we can, and want to put that where it makes sense. So,
Yeah, obviously that's on the south side of the road in front of Intercoastal, so it kind of makes sense if we can keep it on the south side, but,
at this point, we kind of envision utilizing a lot of that along the Intercoastal. There is some along the north side with some of the other developments, as well as the bridge just east of Ringer Road was replaced, and there's a sidewalk or path on the north side of that structure. So we may look to introduce some type of mid-block crossing, which we'd kind of identify where that needs to be so that we have a safe crossing if we tap into that.
okay. I'll make a motion to approve all three, 17, 18, and 19, and give authority to the town manager to sign the contracts, or if that's what is necessary.
Motion. Sure. Motion by Scott. I have a second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Jeff, thank you, sir.
Jeff, before you leave,
Sir.
what construction is going to happen tomorrow on Brooksville Road?
There's some emergency tree trimming, tree clearing between the entrance of Hamilton proper, I think it's Club Point Boulevard, and 116th Street.
So just one day?
It's one day between 9 and 3.
And then, on your announcement, the county's going to look at expanding the bridge on Ella Road, north of 106.
Correct.
Have we given them input that we want a trail included on at least one side of the bridge?
Yep, we've been coordinating with them, and we currently have the design, or not we, they have the design to include a path on the west side of the bridge that would mirror up with some of the path along the west side of the road south of there.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff. We do have an item, unfinished new business, item 5C from the consent agenda that was pulled.
Yeah, real quick, Scott, I think I know the answer, but this is, when this was put in, the funds were paid for by the church. So this change, they understand and they're acknowledged. That's the only, I just wanted that in the record. Okay. Move to approve item 5C from the consent agenda.
Motion by David. Do I have a second? Second by Pete. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. New business, Mike?
Yeah, well, it's kind of old business. At the last planning commission, we had done a plat, and there was some issue raised about some commitments that may impact the ordinance for the particular piece of property. The last conversation I had was with Jennifer Messer. She said she was going to look into that and see whether there was any unfinished business or something that needed to be done to those two commitments, if there needed to be some sort of a variance or something done on the ordinance, and I have not heard anything back.
I've not talked to Jennifer about that specifically lately since you've talked with her, so I'll follow up with her tomorrow and get back to you.
Thank you.
Any other unfinished or new business? I understand we have a little procedure going on afterwards. Is that correct? ALS Ice Bucket Challenge? Very good. As am I. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Haven't seen yours.
Motion by Pete. Do I have a second? Second by Eric. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Have a great week.